This next problem demonstration deals with how we can assess the inventory management of a company, and we can do so using two ratios. The first is called the inventory turnover ratio. It's right here, the cost of goods sold divided by average inventory. Now, average can mean a few different things. If you have 12 months of data because you're on the inside of a company, you can add the 12 months ending inventory up and divide by 12 to get an average. However, if you're not within the company, you may have to rely on this year's ending inventory and last year's ending inventory, add them together and divide by 2. The other ratio we have is called the days to sell, sometimes called days sales in inventory. And we take the number of days in the year, 365, and divide by the inventory turnover we just calculated. So let's take a look at 2015. They ask us to calculate the inventory turnover for 2015, 14, and 13, and then the average days to sell for those same years. And then they ask us if Polaris is performing better than its competitor Arctic Cat, where the inventory turned over 3.7 times in 2015. Okay, so let's take a look first at the inventory turnover, which is an indication of the number of times inventory is sold, average inventory is sold during the period. And a higher ratio means faster inventory turnover. So let's take 2015 cost of goods sold, which is 3,380. And let's divide by our average inventory, which they give us, 640. And we end up there with 5.28. Now, usually Connect asks us to round to the nearest tenth, so that would round to 5.3. Let's do 2014. There we've got 3,160 divided by 490. And our answer there would be 6.44. Rounded, it would be 6.4. In 2013, 2,660 divided by 380. And our answer there would be 7.0. So let's get the rounded numbers in there, because we have to use the rounded numbers in the next calculation. So here we would have 5.3 rounded to the nearest tenth. For 2014, 6.4, and then 2013, 7.0. So essentially what we're saying here is between 2013 to 2015, we're actually going in the opposite direction we should. We had a higher inventory turnover. We bought and then sold our average inventory 7 times in 2013, 6.4 times in 2014, and only 5.3 times in 2015. So we're actually decreasing in our turnover, which is not a good thing. Now let's take a look at the days to sell. Here we take 365 and we divide by the inventory turnover. Now our instructions in Connect are to use the rounded amount. In the real world, it would be more accurate to use the number before rounding. 365 divided by 5.3 would be 68.86 days. Rounded, it would be 68.9 days. For 2014, 365 days divided by 6.4 will give us 57.03 days. And 2013, 365 divided by 7.0 will give us 52.14 days. So again, rounded. Let's take a look at these. If we round to the nearest tenth of a day, 68.9 days. Here we would have 57.0 days in inventory, and then 2013, 52.1 days. So in 2013, our inventory that we purchased remained in inventory unsold 52.1 days. In 2014, it sat in inventory 57 days, and by 2015, over 2 months, it sat for 68.9 days. So things are getting worse for Polaris, but let's compare Polaris to Arctic Cat. In number 2 here, it asks us, is Polaris performing better than its competitor Arctic Cat, whose inventory turnover is 3.7 with 98.6 days to sell, more than 3 months. And definitely in all 3 years, we've got Polaris performing better than Arctic Cat, who only turns over their inventory 3.7 times a year. And in terms of days to sell, Arctic Cat's inventory sits in inventory more than 3 months, 98.6 days, compared to the highest number of days is 2015 for Polaris, and that's 68.9 days. Remember, these types of ratios are very dependent on the type of business that you're in. When we talk about inventory turnover and days to sell, we have to consider the type of goods that are sold. Perishable goods are usually bought in smaller quantities and sold faster because they're perishable. Consequently, we have a higher inventory turnover and a lower days to sell. So things like grocery stores and florists have a higher inventory turnover and a shorter number of days to sell. But for non-perishable goods, as I mentioned in my mini lecture, something like a hardware store, for example, or in this case we've got snowmobiles, they're going to be able to sit in inventory because they're not perishable. So when you want to determine how well your company is doing, you should always compare your company to others that sell the same type of product, and then remember to benchmark your company against the best in the business. Take care.